In reference to Rule 3, the vague language does not provide for a majority of the membership to call a meeting. So any single member, which is part of the membership, can call for a meeting. There's no requirement for the Central Committee chair to preside over them. In reference to Rule 4, it does not reference which parliamentary procedures. There are more than just Robert's Rules of Order. And so there you're left in a quandary as to which parliamentary procedures you follow during a meeting. In reference to Rule 7, nowhere do the bylaws give the executive committee the ability to elect officers and create a second set of bylaws. That's typically never done. You don't have two sets of bylaws. You have bylaws, and then you may have subsidiary rules and procedures that are superseded by the bylaws. All powers granted to the executive committee are granted to it by the controlling committee per Ohio state law. Bylaws are enumerative, and since they do not provide for officers in the bylaws and do not provide for the creation of a second set of bylaws for the executive committee, they may not adopt them. The executive committee quite clearly has the power to conduct campaigns within the county, but the executive committee has no power of endorsement, and neither does the county central committee, because it did not give itself that ability. It's nowhere to be found in the bylaws. In reference to Rule number 8, a regional controlling committee, as far as I know, there is no provision of Ohio law, the Ohio Revised Code, or Ohio Administrative Code, to create regional controlling committees for anything but judicial, senatorial, or congressional districts. And that's Ohio Revised Code 3517.03. Ohio Revised Code 3517.03 was patterned after Michigan law that allows for the formation of judicial district central committees, state senatorial district central committees, and United States House of Representative district central committees. I can find nothing in Ohio law that provides for a provision of having as such a city, village, or township central committees or subsidiary committees. Now, this does not mean that it's against the law to create one or that it's illegal to create one. You can. It's just that the bylaws reference a provision of law that does not exist, so the way that it is written is not legal. This rule number 8, is very poorly written, and it should not reference an Ohio law that does not exist. Additionally, rule number 8 is trying to say the party shall have only chartered or approved county party organizations, the club that are a result of the party. It is quite perplexing in the way that this is written, because we've been repeatedly told by the chairman that the areas operate independently and have to organize under their own EIN number and with their bank accounts, and do not enjoy the party's 527 status with the IRS. This leaves the clubs almost impossible to control from a legal standpoint, because they are not under the umbrella of the county party. If the party wants only chartered clubs and wants to maintain some sort of control over them, the bylaws would provide for a charter and the standards of conduct that they must adhere to. Why is this important? Let's say we have one club that endorses a candidate for U.S. Senate and the party doesn't. This can send mixed messaging. Typically, you want rules that limit their ability to endorse for candidates and issues that are only in their area, and that the county and state is endorsed or supported by the county central committee and the county office holders. In reference to Rule 10, pointing out that the bylaws do not provide for the election of area chairs. So area chairs do not exist in a legal sense. The bylaws, Rule 10, does not provide for the election of the executive committee. As a person on the outside looking in, we have a very confusing system. Precinct committee persons, area caucuses, area chairman, executive committee, steering committee, and central committee all with no adequately defined powers within the document. How can I find out who my representatives are on the executive committee? This has been almost impossible to ascertain. In reference to Rule 12, the concept of an executive committee that is all powerful is in opposition to the concept of why we popularly elect a central committee that is a controlling committee in Ohio Revised Code 3517.02. I will argue that, like what has been found in other states, when power wielding issues go to court, that the executive committee cannot become the controlling committee because it's not provided for in the law. In our case, Ohio Revised Code, only the popularly elected county central committee may be the controlling committee because that is provided for by law. By the county central committee not meeting but once every 4 years, any reasonable person would conclude that the central committee has, in violation of Ohio law, meaning illegally, delegated its powers fully to the executive committee, making it the controlling committee. A controlling committee's bylaws do not supersede Ohio state law. So yes, while the committee can make its own bylaws, those bylaws cannot be in opposition to Ohio state law. Yes, the central committee may delegate some of its powers to the executive committee, and that is normal and proper and provided by law. The executive committee may wield august powers in between meetings of the central committee, but as provided by Ohio law, the central committee must remain the controlling committee. So then, what do states and what do the courts consider controlling when it comes to political parties? While this has not been specifically addressed by Ohio courts in case law, almost universally, other states have held that controlling equates to the power of the purse, which means approving expenditures and setting budgets, approving and amending the bylaws, filling vacancies, making endorsements, setting goals, and drafting the party platform, goals, priority, mission, and vision. When not fulfilling mandated duties, the organization operates as a private political nonprofit organization. First, the executive committee must avoid taking action in a way that might appear to be an encroachment on the power of the central committee. Thus, aside from matters that are explicitly delegated to the executive committee, the executive committee has a responsibility to act only when it is impractical and too time sensitive to wait until the next central committee. Additionally, since an implied part of the executive committee's role is to act in between meetings, there is an implied responsibility to fully inform the county central committee about all actions to be taken by the executive committee and provide the central committee an opportunity to meet and act at a county central committee meeting. This means that when non-acting, where directed by the county central committee or provided specifically by the bylaws, the executive committee's purpose in almost all other functions is largely making recommendations to the county central committee. Lastly, the executive committee should avoid exercising powers that the board has clearly delegated to other committees or other officers.